What is going on, guys? In this clip I'm going to be showing you guys how I like to set up my depth chart for the Baltimore Ravens defensive ebook. I'm also going to go into specific reasons as to why I choose the players that I have here, and that'll help explain who you need to put there on the team that you are playing with. I personally like to play with the 49ers in this game, and the reasoning is because the linebackers are absolutely on steroids. But basically, one thing I want to hit on before I get into specifics is anytime you're on the depth chart, you can click the player details. You do so by pushing the left analog stick in on Xbox One. Just going to bring up this little traits feature that they have added into the game over the last couple years. Now, the things to note, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to explain what these do so you can put players from your favorite team into your scheme if they have these specific traits. Going to get these out of the way. The swim move, spin move, bull rush move, I don't think those actually matter unless you're manually controlling the player. So I don't even look at these. Plays ball in the air. When it says conservative, those are going to be the guys that like to swat the passes down. Whereas if it says aggressive, those are going to be the players that are trying to jump routes and get picks and stuff along those lines. The conservative players, although they are good to have in certain situations, I would like to have all of my players be aggressive if it was possible. However, in more cases than not, it is not going to be that way. Big hitter trait is basically the ability for the computer to trigger that hit stick animation. This is huge, and if you have any of these players that have the big hitter trait on your team, I would highly recommend getting them into your game, simply because any big hit can jar the ball loose, cause a fumble, and change the entire momentum of any given game. The clutch feature, I'm not 100% sure this actually works. I do believe that it seems to come into occasion sometimes, but not really. Like, it's one of those things where if my players clutch, great. If they're not, oh well. I don't focus on that at all. As I mentioned, I'm not 100% sure it works. It could work. I really have no idea. The high motor trait. Ideally, you want everybody on your team to have this. What that does is, if you have a linebacker that has the high motor trait, then that guy is going to be able to get outside of the tackles and be able to chase people down. Chase running backs down, chase drag routes down, stuff along those lines. Whereas if he doesn't have the high motor trait, if he gets beat in any form or fashion, he's actually going to slow down a little bit, and he won't be able to get that ridiculous Superman dive tackle that is very popular by smashing the A button. So that basically sums up the traits of the players. Let's get into what I actually like in my defense. Now, for the defensive line, the left end, right end, and defensive tackle, I think the biggest thing that you need in these spots is going to actually be strength. I feel like strength on the defensive line plays much more of a factor than even block shedding. So I would highly recommend having people with low to high 80s. If you have guys with 90, that's obviously great. But for my left end, I choose to have a guy that has decent speed, solid strength, decent acceleration, if you have a guy like that, because in the 3-4, this is going to be the 3-4 normal, this is going to be the guy that actually comes in. You can change him to put a better, faster guy there if you want. However, I feel that it stops the run much better with having one of these just average players that's, solid but not spectacular in any real asset of the game. Now, like I said, if you have a big hitter trait somewhere in your linebacking core, and he's not really fast enough to play linebacker for you. You don't like to have a slow guy playing linebacker. Put him at defensive end, because in a lot of cases we're going to be zoning these players out anyway. So if they're zoned out, somebody throws a drag route, this guy has a big hitter trait, he's going to run up and smack them. Like I mentioned earlier, that could turn into a fumble, be a very nice change of events if it actually happens. Then, I mean, like I said, it's really strength. That's what I focus on. Now, as far as the defensive tackle goes, for a player like, obviously Justin Smith is fantastic because he's reasonably fast. He's got great strength. He's really just all around good. So if you have a guy like that who maybe has a few less strength points than another guy, I would still recommend having this guy because on some situations you're going to be playing on the defensive tackle. If you want to try to stop the runs that way, you can play on the defensive tackle, smash A, and if it's a pass, you're going to want to drop back into coverage. So being able to roam with a guy that has, for instance, 71 speed compared to a guy that has 57 speed, that's a drastic difference. So I don't think that +2 in strength actually matters that much to overcome the deficiencies that he may have by putting him in that spot. Moving on to the linebacking core, the thing that I personally must have is people that can tackle. I don't think there's anything worse in this game than when I set up my defense perfectly and I hit the guy in the backfield and he breaks the tackle and he gets a long run. There's nothing more demoralizing to me than that. So when like I said, I do play with the Niners most of the time, and the things that I focus on are going to be tackling and also pursuit. That's going to cut out the outside runs much better with the good pursuit angles, and just in case they do get to the outside, the high pursuit ratings will be able to track them down really quick. And then tackling, obviously, when I do hit the guy, I don't want him to break the tackle. Hip power is obviously wonderful if they have it. However, I prefer to have the tackling more so than hip power. It also helps with the Niners that everybody on my team has high tackling and high hip power for the most part. So basically, that's what you're going to want your linebackers to be: reasonably fast, but also to be able to tackle. The middle linebacker, position number 1, that's going to be the guy that you are going to be using in the 3-4 odd and also the nickel 3-3-5. So you're going to want your fast linebacker in this spot. The other linebacker, you want the guy that has the best awareness, the best tackling, hit power, zone coverage, all that shenanigans basically. But if you have that dumb fast guy that you just have to have on your field, put him as your number 1 middle linebacker because he's going to be the guy you're using anyway. Moving on to the corners, like I said, ideally you would want the plays ball in the air trait to be aggressive. However, it's not always possible that way. If they are not aggressive, I have to have very tall corners. And the reasoning behind that is very simple. Got to stop the face throw. So the taller the corners, the better chance I have of getting a pick instead of just knocking it down. Obviously speed. I think you need anywhere between 89 and up speed. Otherwise you typically tend to get beat deep. Acceleration, it helps a little bit. I don't think it's an absolute game changer. Not at the cornerback spot. Outside of that, I like to have guys, like I said, that can jump and knock down those face throws. This nickelback that you want him to be reasonably fast, but also to be able to cover. So basically, you got to have a decent corner in that spot, as well as the number 1 and number 2 spot. The free safety, you're going to want this guy to be your big hitter if you have one. The reasoning behind that is he's typically the guy that is patrolling the middle of the field. If they hit me with a deep post or something, he's going to be the guy that's right there to blast him. So obviously that big hitter trait comes in huge in those spots. And then the final spot is going to be the strong safety. And for the 3-4 Predator Blitz, I actually am blitzing this guy, so I want him to be very fast, if at all possible. And also when I'm not running 3-4 normal or nickel 3-3-5, I'm probably controlling this guy just because I like to roam the field with fast safeties instead of linebackers. But once again, that's a personal preference. Whatever you feel more comfortable with, obviously you'll want to do that. I'm just explaining how I like to set up this depth chart, and just make sure you take those notes when you go to set up your team's depth chart. And I'll go over the specific formations, like how to set up the depth chart when you're running 3-4 normal, 3-4 predator, even stuff along those lines when I'm actually breaking down those videos. But this is going to be my base, and the reason it is my base is because it requires the least amount of adjustments when I am running the other sets. So make sure you take note, and